All right. So on this episode of Empowering Her, we have special guest Dani. Dani, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your wisdom and your experience with everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super thrilled to kind of talk through different career opportunities.
All right. So let's talk about what your current role is, and also let's look at kind of that path that you took to get there, because I think the story is also very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly did not have a traditional path to what I'm doing now, but currently I'm a project man or program manager for Microsoft. I manage our education training program. So that program, we have teams that train educators, students, libraries and museums across both primary and secondary education. And then we also do a lot of like community workshops and philanthropy. So I get to manage that entire program, which is super exciting.
Okay.
Um, my path to get here, as I said, it's pretty not very traditional. I grew up in a very low income single parent family. I didn't have a really ideal childhood, so school was really kind of like an escape for me. And my goals were always to go to college, and I, love education, and so really wanted to continue learning. But early in my junior year of high school, I realized that my goals were not reasonably attainable without accruing like a massive amount of debt. And I wasn't really sure I could support myself. So I decided to just start working full time and just focus on graduating. So I was a first generation high school graduate, which was exciting for my family. And then I went to cosmetology school, which was just not for me. So I quit that and I started working focusing more on my career. At one point, I was the training manager for a chain of movie theaters throughout Oklahoma because I am from Oklahoma City.
All right.
Um, and I ended up finding an opportunity in a sales role at AT&T. And that role, I wanted to challenge myself, and so I had no idea what sales was or how to sell until I started working in that role, and I realized I already have a lot of these skills, but I learned how to build rapport and to be a more active listener, and I learned how to solution sell. But some of the things that I already had were empathy and problem solving skills.
Okay.
And then I wanted something a little bit more technical because I loved technology, and I found a role in the same industry, but as a technical specialist. And that allowed me to really leverage problem solving and led me to Microsoft. So I ended up taking a technical advisor role in our physical retail stores. And I moved into a community development specialist role from there, which allowed me to get way more engaged with education, which was my passion. And then moved into brand and sales manager and an education customer success and support manager, which is a people manager role.
Okay.
And now I'm in my training manager program management role, which is super exciting.
It's interesting because you mentioned that you wanted to go back to college, but you noticed the cost of it was really kind of prohibiting, and that's what I have. I'm in a kind of a rural school area, and so we have a lot of we have farmers and ranchers, and so they do okay financially, but not to the point to where they can just afford to for a lot of the kids to spend money on college. And so if they're not one of the ones that are just like screaming through their ACTs and making 4.0s, then they're it's very limited on the opportunities they have without accruing a lot of debt. And so it would be really wonderful to see if education was a little bit more financially attainable. I know that in my own, I started in a master's program, and I realized I was like, on my salary, I can't afford to pay tuition. So I was like, okay, this is not going to work out. What is the difference between a technical role versus a non-technical role?
Yeah, so a technical role is you do have to have a little bit of technical acumen. And I think students today are in a much better position because technology is a little bit more accessible. And I know that's not true for everybody, but it is significantly more accessible than it has been historically. So I will tell you a secret. Anyone you know who is very technical, they have research skills. That is why they're technical. So those papers that you have to write, the assignments, projects that you have to do, all of that research you're doing, that is a skill that you really want to master, because it's going to be critical if you go into a technical role or a non-technical role. But a technical role really has an understanding of the ever-moving technology. So you have to have a kind of a fundamental understanding of cloud computing and cloud services. So having a fundamental, like really basic understanding of things like Microsoft M365 or Azure, Google, their entire cloud suite, and then like Amazon Web Services. Those are all widely available online, and just having a really fundamental understanding of that can really open up a technical role. A non-technical role, which I'm actually in a non-technical role now, it would be something like program management, which you get to work with a lot of people who are super technical. And what your responsibility is really managing the program. So you are creating a success plan. You are finding resources and connecting the dots. You are critically thinking about the longevity and scalability of the project so that you can be proactive in finding potential blockers or barriers and overcoming those.
And what type of, when you mentioned that for sales itself, and I'm sure this would bleed into the program management, is that you need to have those problem solving skills and be empathetic. So,
Mm-hmm.
what other qualities of a person, if they were, would be really good for maybe the sales and even the program management role?
For sales, it is persistence and grit, for sure. You're going to get a lot more no's than you're going to get yes. So you want to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which I know everyone says that, and it's hard to do, but it's necessary, regardless of where you're going. And you also want to be. I think one thing that made me a really great salesperson is I proactively made sure that I understood my customer even before engaging with them. So that might be, let's say, for example, I worked with an Islamic private school. And so I wanted to make sure that I knew what holidays were coming up for them, what holidays had passed, any events or special events that had been going on, so that I could be cognizant and not reaching out to them on holidays, or I could send them a note and say happy Ramadan, hope everything's going really well, and that makes a huge difference when you're being successful there. So you really want to know the person that you're trying to sell to first, and that absolutely applies to anything else you're going to do in corporate America, really. I have to know the teams that I want to engage with. I have to know the customer that we're targeting with this particular project. And so it requires, again, a lot of research. It requires asking a lot of questions, and being comfortable with asking questions.
Okay, so I believe for you, you do not have a degree. So and that leads to the question of, does program management require a degree? So is getting a degree beneficial for program management? Or are you saying, I mean, obviously you're excelling in the role as a program manager, but would you see any upside to going and getting a degree compared to like boot camps and other online training for program management?
I think for a lot of roles, when you're depending on the company that you're applying for, you're going to notice that a degree is preferred. But it's not necessary. There are a lot of certifications, volunteer opportunities, and just other ways to success. I think for program management, some of the terms you want to like keep in your mind if that's something you're interested in and want to research, are things like agile, because it's just like a framework. And then I'm personally ProSci change management certified. That is not a super accessible certification. I'm very thankful that Microsoft provided the funds for me to do that. It is very expensive, but you can get a lot of the information online anyway and kind of like learn what that system really is. But ProSci is a project science program that really teaches you how to be very specific and even, I mean, scientific with how you approach a project or program that you're managing. So, and it's highly, highly valued. It's around $5,000 to receive that, but that's significantly less than, you know, a college degree, obviously.
Yeah, we were, because I'm kind of going through some of the Coursera courses, and it's like, I don't know, $11 a month or something like that, compared to going and getting, because they have UX design and a few others on there that I would be kind of costly going through a college or even a boot camp. Some of the boot camps are very, very expensive. Now, out of curiosity, because Microsoft is a big, big company, and it's typically, you see a lot of people that want to work at the bigger companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google. And how competitive is the process to get into Microsoft?
It is highly competitive. There's a lot of talent, and there are only so many roles at Microsoft. So it is certainly competitive. It's critical, not critical, it's helpful, extremely helpful. If you build a relationship with somebody in the industry, preferably in the organization that you want to work for, referrals go an extreme way when you're looking to apply for those roles. I know our recruiters, they don't necessarily only look at referrals. That's not the case at all, but they do rely pretty heavily on those referrals to look for potential talent and kind of weed through the hundreds of thousands of applications to one particular role.
Yeah, that's what we were, talking about on LinkedIn the other day in a thread where there was somebody complaining about, why won't they give me an opportunity? Is it just because of my background? And several responses included, well, you are applying at companies in the same roles that hundreds, if not thousands, of others are also applying for, and so I think I like how you said kind of that referral, which kind of goes to the importance of networking, really getting to know people that work. And not only that, but I think it's beneficial because sometimes we have like a romantic notion of like, oh, it would be wonderful to work at Google and it'd be amazing. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I've never worked there, but at least if you network with people that work there, you can go, hey, Dani, all right, give me the inside scoop. Is it as cool working there as it sounds? And then at least you get that understanding of companies that you would like to work for and not.
Yes.
Let's so project management or program management, and it's you're kind of keeping the planning and the budgeting and keeping everything together. So if somebody wanted to go your route and kind of end up where you are, where would they want to start? I noticed you kind of moved into sales and you were managing and things like that. So if they wanted to kind of follow in your footsteps, what would that career path look like?
Yeah. So what I think a lot of people don't know is that some of these large companies have programs that are specifically designed for early in career individuals.
Okay.
Some of them require college experience. A lot of them don't. So if you filter jobs by career level, that can be really helpful to find your entry position. We have a ton of roles open right now within our Microsoft Direct Sales and Support piece of the business. And so that might look like sales, it might look like training, it might look like web chat support. There's a lot of different roles within that space, but those are roles that are designed to build talent and be a talent funnel for the company. So they're great. It's a great way to kind of just get into the company and figure out really where you want to go and what skills you're going to need to get to that next step. So today, that is definitely what I would recommend if you want to work at Microsoft and you want to move into maybe program management or customer success management, which is really listening to the customer really closely and helping them solve their problems. So, I mean, that's an excellent starting point. Another thing I would highly encourage is to look at certifications
Okay.
for both the company you want to work for and their competitors. Because if you understand the competitor,
Mhm.
then that's going to give you an advantage when you go into your interview and when you're actually doing the role.
Okay, that is amazing because I just did a chat with Mandy the other day where we talked about interviewing, and I think I'm glad you brought that up because interviewing itself, you kind of want to do everything you can
Mhm.
to put yourself, stand out against the other, 50 to 100 people that the hiring managers, those poor hiring managers that they're just doing all those interviews with, that you can stand out. Um, so let's force, and this is always kind of a tricky question because it's like it can be different at like a large corporation like you're at. It
Mhm.
could be whether you're at a startup, a nonprofit, ed tech, so it's all over the place. But what would an average salary range look like, maybe starting out into maybe a project coordinator all the way up to like the program coordinator or the program manager, and then kind of what does that salary look like along from early stage all the way to late stage?
So when you're looking at early stage roles, you're probably looking at around 50,000 a year, not including your benefits or like compensation potential, like your bonus potential,
Mhm.
or stocks. So I will say this before I continue: your pay is only one piece of your compensation, and it's super
Okay.
important. And you want to make sure you're paid what you're worth, but you also need to look at the benefits package, the cost that you're going to be spending for your health insurance, whether or not this organization provides tuition assistance, whether or not this organization provides paid parental leave, paid vacation time, sick time, what holidays you're paid for. Those are things you really want to keep in mind when you're looking at your total compensation. And it's not something I think a lot of people really think about. And it's super, super important. So I will say that. And then for where I'm at in my stage, you're looking at a six-figure role, so you're looking over $100,000 a year before your bonus.
So, and this is always an interesting one because I didn't even, in the world of education, we don't get bonuses. We just, and half the time the step raises are frozen and stuff. So, what is, and so when when a friend told me that he got what his bonus was, I was like, it's like my whole salary. What are you like? What is so? What when it comes to bonuses, what is usually involved in receiving a bonus?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on which part of the business you're in. Sales bonuses are usually dependent on your metrics to like to actual budget. So if you're budgeted, like let's say I'm going to put a small number. Let's say you're budgeted to make like $10,000 a quarter, to sell $10,000 a quarter, and you sell $20,000, then you're at 200% comp, and so that might look like 35% of your base salary that you would get for the year. And a lot of times they're paid out quarterly. So you'll get, a quarter of that each quarter.
Okay.
And then the further you go into different roles, it could be anywhere from 10% of your base salary up to like 30% of your base salary. And the actual amount that you end up with is based on your performance. It's based on your impact in terms of, so great, you're doing a wonderful job and you've mastered your role, but how are you impacting the other people on your team? How are you engaging with the rest of the company? Are you working to create an inclusive environment for your peers and for everybody that you're engaged with? Those are things that are considered. And I mean, when you think about, let's say you're making six figures a year and you think, even if you only get 10% of your base salary, that's still a significant amount that's added. So
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned, looking at like the insurance and stocks and things like that, because I think a lot of us, especially when you're younger and you're first starting in your careers, you're and maybe that's just the nature of the beast, is that you're not so concerned about that investments that are going to fuel towards retirement and stuff like that. But glad you mentioned that, because I think that's what most people just think about is, how much am I going to make? And then you don't you don't take into account, like for instance, my wife, she makes a great salary where she's working, but her insurance is crazy expensive. Whereas, I receive my insurance, the state pays for it. So it kind of counterbalances that a little bit. So I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because it's definitely something that a lot of people don't think about, especially young, when you're first
Mhm.
starting your careers. Let's shift over to mentors for a second. And how important do you feel mentors are? And what what do you consider mentorship?
Yeah. I will say that mentors are pretty critical in developing your career, especially if you're not going to college, but I think they're really important even if you are in college. Mentors will help you build a skill that you don't currently have, and they will continuously provide you feedback on your behavior, on your progress, on the ideas that you have. And your mentors can be internal, they can be external, and they when you're looking for a mentor, you really want to look for someone who has a skill that you don't have, or who has a job that you don't have, that you are interested in and want to learn how to like get to that point. I will also say that there is a difference between someone who is your mentor and someone who's your advocate or your sponsor.
Okay.
Sometimes your mentor will be that, right? Like sometimes your mentor will be your advocate and your sponsor, but a sponsor is somebody who refers you to roles, who finds a skill that you don't have and says, "Hey, we're going to do this certification together." Who has your back and is like looking proactively supporting and lifting you up into a role that you don't have. And so that's a really important piece too.
Okay, that's fantastic. Um, Real quick, and I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but is there a difference between program management versus project management?
Um, I think there is a little bit of a difference. So program management is more high level, like overview thinking, where you're
Okay.
like really looking at an entire program, and then project management is like a specific project within a program.
Okay, perfect. I just, for some reason, I was like, wait a minute, let's break this down. So yeah, so I like that. So really, kind of, if you're a person that kind of sees like the big picture of everything, kind of that program management might be a really good kind of role for somebody.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I have one last hot seat question for you.
Okay.
Okay. And your answer doesn't necessarily have to be related to career or education. It can be just life in general. But knowing what you know now, what is one piece of advice you would give to your middle school or high school self?
You do not have to decide what you want to do when you grow up in that moment.
Okay.
Um, I am an entirely different human being than I was when I graduated high school 15 years ago. 15 years. Entirely different human being. And I've changed career paths multiple times. Um, until I found something that I felt really good about. So that is what I will say. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in school. Like that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about education and why I love the role that I'm in now. Um, but I would say like find things that you're super passionate about and build your skill set, but you don't have to decide who you want to be when you grow up because you don't know yet.
Right. Okay. Well, that is awesome. Well, Danny, I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to share with us everything, and you know giving students, and also I know that there will be career changers that will be watching this, that will give a better understanding of kind of the roles that are out there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was
Yeah.
great.